got the lovely Jason Chesworth, or Mr. Cheese, as those of you that watch My Kitchen Rules will know. Probably not known for his cooking prowess, but definitely his passion for agriculture, and he has a fantastic story to tell about his career and where he's come from and how he's got there. So I'll pass over to you, and you can take the floor.
Plenty of memories come flooding back. I didn't even realise the chairs had a little desk on the front, and I didn't actually realise how many years it's been since I've been at uni. Once you leave, you sort of go flat out, and you're on your way to do something with your career and your life, and whether that be your dream you've had since you were 5 or the dream you decided last week, you just get so caught up in life sometimes. And it's good to come back to things like this and just sort of remember where you came from, I suppose. So I suppose in terms of, so you guys are a bit of a mix of year 12s and first year students. So half of you probably, and a third year, half of you will probably go on radio, convince me to come to uni and study agriculture next year, and the other half of you go, well, I've done that, so are you going to tell me what I get at the end of it? And the funny thing about uni is all you'll get at the end of it is whatever you're willing to put in. So this isn't school anymore. You don't need to turn up to lectures if you don't want to. You don't need to do what you don't want to do. But if that's your attitude, you'll get to where you're going to get with that attitude as well, if that makes sense. So if I go back to when I was at that point, I suppose I actually remember it quite clearly. I was at a cattle show down in Victoria, and uni places were being announced, and I was a little bit upset that I didn't get offered the vet position that I wanted to go to, and I was at that point where I was about to go stuff uni. Like I had a really good job offer from within the dairy industry, something that I'm very passionate about. So I was sitting there as a young guy going, well, do I take the 50k and the car and the phone and my laptop that's offered to me right now? Like, why should I go and waste 3 or 4 years on uni? And Dad at the time sort of said to me, mate, if you ask me what I learned at ag college for 3 years, he said if you'd asked me the day I left, I would have said nothing. But I had a good time, had some good blokes, had some good times, that's what it was about. He said 10, 15 years down the track, and you get into your career, and you get into your life, it's along that way that you actually realise what you learnt. And it's all of a sudden, it doesn't matter if you're down in a paddock with a farmer and he says something to you and all of a sudden something clicks in your head and you're like, hey, wait a second, I know that there. So you probably don't really understand what you learn at uni until you're that far down the track. And for him, it was learning how to think, and learning how to problem solve, and learning how to be able to assess the situation for its strengths and its weaknesses, and understand how you as a person can basically manipulate that situation. What power do you have to change what's in front of you, basically. So I went, rightio Dad, if that's the case, he might have said something about at the end there about having a bit of a good time and plenty of girls at uni, plenty of footy, plenty of alcoholic beverages available, I'm sure, everywhere. So that was a side of it as well, was that social side of things. I'd gone to boarding school for 4 or 5 years prior to that, and I really enjoyed that aspect of boarding school. So I went, stuff it, I'm going to go to uni. So I actually went to uni with the thinking in my head that I had to get really good marks in the first year of uni because I still wanted to be a vet and I wanted to transfer across and do vet science. And it wasn't actually till I got to uni, got the first year of ag science, and realised that my passion was actually numbers. We had an agribusiness subject and I found my calling. And so I can remember, say the uni coming and saying, do you want to do an interview for vet science again this year? And I went, no, I'm happy where I am. I found my calling, I found something I really enjoyed looking at, and that was basically numbers and business within agriculture. So I kept going along on that journey. A couple of years down the track, I went to probably, once you get into uni, they have these graduate days basically that you'll go along to, and there'll be a heap of companies there, and they'll have graduate programs that they'll want you to come and be a part of, and that's a really great way to get your sort of foot into the door, because most of them will actually offer you the job before you finish uni in your last year. So when you're doing your those final exams, you know that you've already got a job lined up waiting for you to go. So I was actually lucky enough to get a job in a graduate program that required me to go and relocate to Holland in Europe, and that was just anyone else in that room of a couple hundred people, that opportunity was open to them. But it was not necessarily my marks that they looked at, and it wasn't necessarily how good of a student has he been. For them, it was all about he's got amazing passion and he loves the dairy industry, and he's got good social skills. We can use those, and we can continue to train him into what he can, to a person that can add value to their business, I suppose. So, and that's probably the big difference in agriculture to a lot of other industries, is that a lot of other industries you have to go to uni and you have to learn a set criteria for you to then be able to practice that job out in the real world, whether it be a doctor or a dentist or accountants or anything like that. They've got to go through that, where agriculture is so broad that you literally can't do that. So we can go to uni, we can study the broad aspects, and while we're at uni we can delve into little things that really interest us, but in terms of what you want to decide to do at the end, we are so lucky because within this industry there is just so many avenues to have a look at. It's not funny. And go from being a bank manager, dealing in agribusiness, which was a path that I really looked at closely. You can look at the vet side of things, you can have a look at, I know that this course has got a big focus on food science and the security behind food production, which I think is a very important point going forward. So, they're the type of things I suppose that companies look at. Is it's not necessarily what your mark is at the end of the day. It's going to be more about this. Does this person have the skills to be able to go out and communicate with people? Do they have the skills to continue learning? And do they have the skills to be able to add value to my customers, clients or services, regardless of whatever it may be? So from that, I basically landed a dream job with everyone back at uni going, are you kidding me? Like you sort of, excuse my French, basically stuffed around at uni a fair bit. You had heaps of fun, you did that, and you get to the uni and you get such a good job. And I had a mate that had a distinction average and didn't quite get the job that he wants. So it's a very different to school, whereas it's not the best marks at the end of the day you're going to get you the best job. It's who do you become as a person, and what value companies I suppose see in that. So getting back to my story, I suppose, over in Holland for 6 months, trained by the best salespeople in the Dutch in terms of selling stuff. No one does it better than them. They very early worked on that they've got a very, very small country and we can't make much in this country. So let's take everything that everyone else makes and let's stick a margin on it and let's resell it again. So the Dutch are known as the king of traders. So that was an unbelievable experience, I suppose, to get that skill set, dealing in foreign markets with new cultures and still trying to get your job done. And when I came back to Melbourne to be based in the Australian market, I was literally purely dealing into that Asian market with Australian-based stuff. And after a little while, it just sort of started to get to me a little bit. It was a very sort of dollars and cents commodity market. There was no relationships or loyalty or anything like that. A deal could be cut like that and you wouldn't know why, and there'd be nothing you could do about it. And that's probably not the way that I enjoy to do business. I tend to sort of go above and beyond for my customers, and for me the value that I present to my partners or my customers' businesses is my first thing that I sort of think about when I walk into somewhere. So I then got an opportunity basically, and it was from doing this job, and that's probably the next point, is that if you get into a job once you leave uni and you're worried after 6 months, this might be the job for me, I'm a bit worried that I'm going to get stuck doing this for the next 30 years of your life, don't stress. Opportunities come along every single day, hey, and you never know where they're going to lead you. And I had an opportunity with a bloke that I'd been working with basically in Australia, and next thing I know, I'm back at farm level, setting up a nutrition company dealing with farmers again. So that was I really enjoyed those couple of years. I did that to get back onto those sort of the ground roots, I suppose, from where I came from. And I was able to really help a lot of dairy businesses in all over Australia in terms of what they were doing for their business. In terms of feeding cows, it's a pretty hard task these days to actually make $1 out of doing that. So I really enjoyed the amount of value I was able to add to businesses there. And while doing that, it was very rewarding, and it was probably about that time when I started to ask questions about myself and go, rightio, well, I've done quite well for other people now, and I've built a few businesses that have done very well, and I've been able to move on and go into a new role. And maybe I need to start thinking about me. Maybe I need to start thinking about what sort of a business I might want to run for, you know, a good 20 or 30 years and really make a good asset that may be worth something. And at the time, my parents had recently basically sold the family farm, so that option was ruled out. There's a big red line through that. And I thought that was probably the end of it. I thought that I'd never really, after that happened, I wouldn't be involved in it, but it's not necessarily the case at all. And Mum and Dad bought a little boutique cheese factory probably six months later, and I sort of from the distance basically just sort of helped them drive the sales and grow sales. And after a little while I went, Dad, I think I want to come back and do this sort of full time. And okay, no worries. He said, Jay, these aren't farmers you've got to sell to now, and this isn't just some product. He said, I'm sure you've got some great skills, but this is a completely different ballgame, mate. This isn't selling a bag of milk powder to a dairy farmer who'll feed to a calf, or a nutritional supplement that he's going to feed to his cows. This is a completely different game. Now, I think I was as shocked as what he was, just how far I got. And after 12 months, I basically tripled his wholesale department, and he was scratching his head as to how I'd done it as well. But it all comes back from day one, from when I left uni and I took that first job, and that sales training that was provided to me at that point. And that's what I was saying earlier on, is you don't actually realise what you learnt at uni until you're out in the big wide world and you're forced to come to a fork in the road and you've got to make a decision. You've got to go left, you've got to go right. And it's at those points that you actually are able to assess the situation and go, yep, sweet, I'm going to make a formed decision here and I'm going left. And as you're travelling down that road, you sort of look over your shoulder a bit, and whether it be, for me, there was a certain lecture at uni for me that really pushed the way that I thought, and you think about that, or you think about what you actually learned at that point, and that's when you actually go, I've got this amazing set of skills now that has allowed me to add value to all these different businesses, whether it be a dairy farmer, whether it be as a commodity trader, whether it be as a nutritionist. So I spent my whole career, over the last sort of 10 years basically, all within the dairy industry, but going from one end of a supply chain to the other. Starting off growing up on a dairy farm, going all the way to the sort of world dairy markets as a commodity trader, coming back down through that nutrition work, and now sort of based in that food manufacturing sector of it. You sit back and you go, there's no way in the world we could have achieved and set up the business that me and Annie and Mum and Dad have now if it wasn't for all those skills that I learnt, not just at uni, but along the way as well. So my advice to you is you'll never get a shot you don't take. So take every shot that you get given. Don't try and think too hard about the end game, because that'll just happen. And I personally, I was pretty guilty of that as younger. Probably when I was at uni, it was about the end game, where like, I've got to get through this, I've got to get uni. I was busting to get out of the doors, busting to get in the workplace. Don't. Take your time. Trust me, because there's weeks right now that I would happily trade places with you, and those memories of what you could get away with in a week at uni come back, and you just go, oh my God, that would be so nice to go back to. No responsibility. When your phone rings, it's only your friends asking you to go down to the pub for a drink. So you get busier in life, you get more responsibilities, and you will get the skills either from uni or within the jobs that you'll get after uni to basically tackle anything. Don't let anyone tell you no. You guys got any questions?
What course did you study?
So it was a straight ag science degree at Wagga that I was originally enrolled in, and then after 12 months I changed across into agribusiness. So, and that was basically just taking some of those sort of real science subjects out and replacing them with sort of more business focus. So instead of doing scientific statistics, I did business statistics. And for me personally, I found that much easier to follow and understand. I'm probably more of a numbers-based man than what I am a science-based man, and I don't know how there is a difference there. So, yeah.
Did you have to get a high ATAR for that?
Nah, not at all. Generally, and it's a bit funny, because when you have a look at what is the year of ATAR these days, isn't it? Yep, sorry. As I said, it's been a long time. So it was still a USI or something.
UAI. I'm a UAI girl
That's
as
what
well.
it was
Don't
when
worry,
we
we'll
went
be
through
all
it.
together.
No, I think from memory it was probably like 63 or 4 to get in down at Wagga. Generally, ag-based courses are actually really reasonable to get into, and a lot of courses across Australia actually these days have really good principal recommendation programs as well. So anyone that was struggling to work out what they wanted to do to uni but was pretty sure they wanted to go to uni, ag science is such a good one because you could go and do that for 12 months, and then if you wanted to transfer across into another course that is more specialised, no worries at all. And the best thing about uni is there generally will be some credits that you can take across to that because it is such a broad subject, and a lot of the stuff they teach in that first 6 to 12 months will be able to be applicable across a wide sort of field.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. If you're asking them, I can guarantee you half the other room's thinking.
Is it very difficult to get like credits in agriculture?
As in marks?
Yeah, like.
I'm gonna basically beat the whole stigma down because you guys are still probably coming out of that school program where it's built into you that marks is all that matters. And I go against it. I think trying to force someone to put everything that they've learned on a 6-month period down on a bit of paper within 3 hours, I think, excuse me, crap. Like, case studies are way more important to me. Actually going out in the field that we're looking at and doing those sort of things, I think, is probably what I got a hell of a lot more out of at uni. In terms of, is it hard to get a credit? No, it's not hard to get a credit. It's not hard to get a distinction. It's not hard to get a high distinction. It all comes back to that level of work that you're willing to sort of put into that. And if those marks and those grades are important to you, then you'll make that time and that effort to put into it to get those marks. And there'll probably be other people in the room that'll be just like me that, you know, the marks are important because they're a KPI of results and how you're going, but as long as they're not down here, then I'm not that concerned that they're not up there as well. It's more about learning the field that you're about to go into. Any other questions?
Or maybe one more if there is, because otherwise
Yeah.
we have to keep moving on.
Awesome. Well, good luck, guys. And as I said, don't let anyone tell you no, and just opportunities come from every single avenue. So don't go looking for them; they'll come to you. Just sit back and make use of the opportunities when they come.